It was a Saturday afternoon when my life took an unexpected turn, one that I'll never forget. 1 minute, I was cleaning up after lunch, enjoying a quiet day at home with my 10-year-old son, Jake. And the next minute, I was wrestling two grown men in my garage, fighting to protect my kid. I never thought it would come to this. I've been a Navy SEAL for most of my adult life, so I'm no stranger to dangerous situations, but nothing prepared me for what happened that day. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening. Your support means everything. Let me back up a bit. My name's Nick, and after years of service in the military, I decided to retire early and settle down in a quiet neighborhood with my family. We were looking for peace and stability, and for a while, we found it. Our community was clean, safe, and everyone seemed to respect one another. At least, that's what I thought. The whole thing started with a letter. Not the usual one about lawn care or garbage pickup, no. This one was different. It came from the HOA Homeowners Association, and it had the audacity to accuse me of violating neighborhood rules because my son was playing too loudly in the front yard. Now, anyone with kids knows that a child's laughter can sometimes get a little noisy, but we weren't talking about a party. Jake was out there with a football, throwing it around with a couple of his friends. That's it. Nothing outrageous. At first, I laughed it off. A noise complaint. Really? I mean, sure. I knew the HOA had a reputation for nitpicking, but this was a whole new level of petty. I figured I'd call them and clear things up. Let them know I wasn't about to apologize for my kid being a kid. But when I called, things didn't go the way I expected. The person who answered the phone didn't sound like someone from the HOA office. It was a deep voice, gravelly and a bit too authoritative for a regular office worker. Introduced himself as Officer Harris, which immediately made me raise an eyebrow. Officer in an HOA. Weird, right? I asked him about the complaint and what it meant, and he told me that I needed to bring my son into compliance with the rules. When I pressed him on what exactly I was supposed to do, he said, "We'll come by later to discuss it." Now, I know what you're probably thinking, Nick. Why didn't you just ignore them? And yeah, in hindsight, maybe I should have. But when you've been in the military, your instincts tell you when something's off. This felt off. The guy was using language like he was some sort of enforcer, not an HOA representative. And why the we? Who was he referring to? The whole situation gave me a bad vibe, but I decided to wait and see what would happen. Big mistake. That evening, after dinner, Jake and I were in the garage messing around with some old bikes of mine. It was a simple father-son moment, just bonding over something that didn't need to be overanalyzed. Suddenly, the garage door opened, and two men walked in, both wearing bright green HOA enforcement shirts. They weren't even trying to hide what they were doing. I glanced over at Jake, who was standing next to me, a puzzled look on his face. "Dad, who are they?" I wasn't sure what to say. I stepped in front of him, instinctively putting myself between Jake and these two strangers. One of the men, a stocky guy with tattoos all over his neck, was the one who spoke first. "You're Nick?" he asked, his voice gruff. "Yeah. Who the hell are you?" I replied, my voice sharp. "We're from the HOA," the other guy said, his tone dripping with arrogance. He had short hair, a tactical vest, and a utility belt that looked a little excessive for a neighborhood dispute. "We're here to enforce the rules about noise violations. Your kid is disturbing the peace. We've warned you already." Now, I'm not a hothead, but this was crossing a line. The guy was standing in my garage, acting like some sort of authority figure, and I wasn't about to let this fly. "You can't just barge in here like this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Who gave you the right to come to my home and start making demands? That's none of your business." The first guy sneered. "You'll need to get your son and come with us. HOA policy." Now, at that moment, I realized something was seriously wrong. These guys weren't legit. They didn't have the proper identification, the right paperwork, hell. They didn't even have an official logo on their shirts. Just the words HOA enforcement slapped on in a way that screamed fake. My instincts kicked into overdrive. I stood taller, more aware than ever of the space around me. I wasn't in the military anymore, but I still had the training. And these guys were playing a dangerous game. "What's this really about?" I asked. My voice low but firm. "You're not with the HOA. You're not cops. What are you trying to pull?" The second guy smirked, but it was the first guy who responded. "You don't need to worry about that. Just hand over your son, and this'll all go a lot smoother." That was the breaking point. My son was right there. No way in hell was I letting these guys walk out of my garage with him. I squared up, getting ready to move. "Jake, go inside," I said, keeping my eyes locked on the two men. Now, Jake didn't hesitate. He turned and sprinted toward the door without a second thought. Good kid. Before I could even process what was happening, the two HOA enforcers lunged at me. The stocky guy tried to grab me, but I was faster. Years of SEAL training don't just disappear. I dodged his grip and slammed my elbow into his ribcage, knocking the wind out of him. The other guy came at me from the side, but I was ready. I twisted his arm, bringing him to the ground with a well-executed joint lock. Both of them were on the ground now, struggling to get up. The stocky guy tried to throw a punch, but I blocked it and forced him onto his back, pinning his arms with ease. I could see the panic in their eyes now. They weren't expecting me to fight back. They had probably assumed I'd just complied after all. Who would fight a couple of officials, right? But I wasn't about to let these clowns get away with it. "You think you're going to take my son?" I spat. "You've got another thing coming." The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. I didn't wait around to see what happened next. I gave both of them a final warning, making sure they couldn't move. And then I called the cops, the real cops. I stayed on the line, letting them know what happened. When the police arrived, it didn't take long to figure out what was going on. Turns out, the two men weren't working for any legitimate HOA. They were just a couple of con artists who'd been pretending to be enforcers in an attempt to intimidate families into handing over money for fines that didn't exist. They had a whole scheme going, running around neighborhoods and making up bogus violations to force people to pay them off. The police arrested them, and the rest of the story made its way through the news. I was interviewed briefly, but I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. What mattered to me was that Jake was safe, and the guys who tried to take him would never hurt anyone again. As for the HOA, they were just as shocked as I was. They couldn't believe these frauds had been using their name. They issued a public apology, and to their credit, they made sure to tighten up their processes after that. But the real lesson I learned from all this: trust your gut. And when it comes to your family, never back down. I'm just glad Jake and I are all right. And as for those fake HOA cops, well, let's just say they'll be in a lot more trouble than they ever bargained for.